Hey everyone. In this video I wanted to spotlight my favorite era of the Justice League of America, and that is when they went to a double-sized slash giant format starting with issue number 139, and that went all the way up until number 157. This was, I'm 10 years old back in 1977, and I'm starting to buy the Justice League of America on a monthly basis, and it was my go-to comic. If I could afford nothing else, I made sure I had 50 or 60 cents to buy this issue, this title. And whether I was going to the Schiller Park drugstore in the town I grew up in Illinois, Schiller Park, or if I was out and about at a bookstore at a mall with some family in the Chicagoland area, I always looked for the Justice League first and foremost on the spinner rack. I also think this was just a great era for this title, as Steve Englehart took over the writing chores from this issue, number 139, all the way up to 150, though he did not write issues 147 and 148. But he added, I believe, depth to the characters, and some of the finest stories were written during this time. And even though I think when Jerry Conway took over with number 151, I think it took Jerry Conway just a little bit to really make the Justice League his own, even though he had written some stories earlier. But once he made it his own, Conway drew some, or not drew, but wrote some masterpieces. But we're just going to focus on this set from number 139 to 157. And I'm just going to probably go up to 148, and we'll do a second part later in the week. So starting with 139, it's the only one in the entire run of the giant format that had two novels, as you can see. The first was a continuation from the previous issue, number 138, written by Cary Bates, called The Cosmic Conspiracy Against Adam Strange. And in the second story was Steve Englehart's first writing chores with the Justice League. The story is titled The Ice Age Cometh. Also, interesting to note, this is a Neal Adams cover, and if I am not mistaken, this was Mr. Neal Adams' last cover for the Justice League of America in their first series. And you're going to see a common theme here, by the way, with every issue. It's called multiple copy sickness. I just love this run so much. When I got back into collecting after being out of it for 10 years, this was the first thing I wanted to put together, was all the giant issues of the Justice League. And I did, and then I just loved it so much. Every time I saw an issue at a good price, I just had to pick it up. So anyway, there's the first one. Again, Neal Adams on the cover. I'm not going to go in depth on the articles or what the stories were about. Just maybe cover who did the cover work and who was on the script. And again, this is Steve Englehart. Cary Bates in the first story, Steve Englehart in the second. And there's another copy. Then going to number 140. This is just one story, and this is how it was for the remainder. There was no more two stories per book. Rich Buckler and Frank McLaughlin are on the cover. Steve Englehart's on the script. A nice looking copy. I love the colors. I love the cover. And I think I just have one more of these as well. And this is the cover dates again, March 1977. Now, going back real quick, I never bought this one on the newsstand. I always saw it in house ads and always wanted it, and eventually down the road I did pick up a copy, and a couple copies since then. I do not recall if I had number 140 or the following issue when I was a kid, because you're looking at over 40 years old, these books are, but this is number 141. This is the second part of that story. This time Rich Buckler is on the cover, and the inker's Frank Springer. Steve Englehart, is on the scripts. Great book. This is actually a very nice copy. Very nice copy indeed. You can actually see a little of the difference. Well, it's kind of hard to see here, but this is not a bad copy either. Moving to 142. You have Rich Buckler and Jack Abel on the cover. Steve Englehart on the scripts. I had this as a kid. I probably read it, I'm sure, like with all my childhood copies, I read them, reread them over and over. And I wish I can say that what I'm showing, that some are my childhood copies, but that's not the case. I had sold every comic I had when I turned 40, so any childhood copies went away during that time, sadly. That's why I'm envious when people like Shannon or Alan from After Comics or even Rod, they show their childhood copies, and even though they're, as Shannon would say, are well loved, those are probably the most valuable in anybody's collection, if you ask me. Again, there's 142, and I have just a couple more copies of that. With 143, we go to the 60 cents. We see that it's jumped a dime, a whopping dime. And it's the battle with Wonder Woman versus Superman. And it always fascinated me when either DC or Marvel had their heroes fighting each other. And this was no exception. I had this as a kid, this issue, not this particular issue, as I've said. Had it, loved the cover. They're in the JLA satellite, 22,300 miles above Earth. And I believe that this preceded the Treasury edition of Superman and Wonder Woman, which was the Earth 2 Superman and Wonder Woman or Golden Age. But have that. This is Steve Englehart on the, obviously on the scripts. Dick Dillon and Jack Abel on the cover. And one more copy of that. 144, What's Not to Love? A ton of superheroes on the cover. An all-new 33-page spellbinder from the days before there was a JLA, featuring 30 heroes of yesteryear. And you're looking at, and that's not the Golden Age Batman, that is just Batman. This was the days before the JLA. His logo on it, or his insignia on his chest had not changed yet. So you have Batman, Robin, you have the Blackhawks, Vigilante, Plastic Man, and I loved it because I thought the more the merrier. I just thought you're getting more bang for your buck. And only Dick Dillon could draw all these heroes, and it was a challenge. And this is Dick Dillon on the cover along with Frank McLaughlin and Steve Englehart doing the scripts. Loved the story. Loved it. Just as a one-shot, meaning that was just, there was no two-parters, but, you know, think about it. These are double-sized, so you're really actually getting two stories in one. And I liked that for the fact that it enabled, I guess, the story to be drawn out a little more. You didn't have to wrap it up within 17 pages. And just more development of the story. And I have another copy of that one. And then moving to this one, number 145. This is arguably my favorite Justice League of America of all. I had, again, this was a copy I had as a kid. I read it till the cover fell off, and then I taped the cover back on. Phantom Stranger also is in this issue, as anytime they dealt with, in the realm of the supernatural, you knew the Phantom Stranger was going to make an appearance. And I was fascinated because Superman died in this one, as did Hawkman and Phantom Stranger. Of course, we know that most superheroes never stay dead, and that was the case here, but for a 10-year-old, I didn't know any better. But I love the story. It was great. And I have a few copies. I love the cover. I love the colors on the cover. And again, Steve Englehart did the script, and this is Dick Dillon and Jack Abel on the cover again. I believe I have just a couple more copies of this one. And one more. Now, when 145 ended, towards the end, there was a doorway open from death back to life that enabled Superman, Phantom Stranger, and Hawkman to return. And at the end, you see that Red Tornado has also returned. And he claims that that doorway that was open enabled him to come back to life. But you find out in the beginning that it was the construct that brought him back. But then later on in the story, you find out that he is alive. I think they had killed him off, I know, twice previously. I think in maybe 103 they killed him off, and then he came back to life, only to die again with issue, I think it was around 129, 130. And another thing to point out, what I really liked, is that in this issue and several others of the Giant format, at the end of the comic, they would either have an extra mailbag room, an extra mail room for more letters from the readers, excuse me, and then also they would have a little condensed version of 100 issues ago. They would show the cover and maybe 2 or 3 pages worth of story from the Justice League of America 100 issues ago. So we have that. Again, Dick Dillon, Jack Abel on the cover. Steve Englehart on the scripts. There we go. And then the last two I'm going to show for this video. Number 147. Now, Steve Englehart, and I don't know why, did not write 147 or 148. In this issue, Paul Levitz and Marty Pascal are on the writing chores. The cover is by Dick Dillon and Frank McLaughlin. I loved it. It was the annual summer team-up of the Justice League of America and the Justice Society, and this time the Legion of Superheroes joined them. And yes, you have an October cover, but as we know, comics magazines all were published ahead of time, and the actual on-sale date of this title from October of 1977 was in fact July 7th, 1977. That's when it hit the newsstands. Great issue. Had this as a kid. Loved it. Loved it. Loved it. A lot going on. And again, the more heroes, the better. And I have another copy. Here, let's go over here so I don't have a cast a shadow. Oh, and I have another one. I have 3. Imagine that. Yes, like I said, that duplicate copy sickness is real. And if there is a cure, I do not want it. The last issue that I'm going to show today is number 148. It's the second part to this team-up. 19 heroes, 3 villains so mighty it takes 19 heroes to fight them in the giant Justice League of America. Rich Buckler, Jack Abel are on the cover, and this was written by Marty Pascal. I had this as a kid. I liked it, but I liked the cover of 147 more. But still, this was very good. This was excellent. Just excellent. And one more copy there. Well, that's it. I just wanted to show this era that I love so much of my beloved Justice League of America. And I'll be back maybe tonight or another day this week to show issues number 149 to 150. Until then, thanks. Be good, everyone.